So hopefully by this point you've either recreated the same app yourself or you've created some other web app in Django that's running perfectly fine on your local system. Now, the steps to get this up and deployed on Heroku are many, and we're going to go through them step by step, and hopefully by the end of it get this same exact site to display on the public internet. Okay, so where do we start? Well, first thing that you need to do is go to GitHub, make sure you have an account that you're signed in, and click create new repository, and that will bring you here. And let's create a repository for our weather application or whatever app you have, and don't change any settings, just go ahead and publish it. And you need this URL here. This is your the URL for your weather app Git repository, and we're going to use this through the command line to push all of our contents of our site up to GitHub and then also up to Heroku. Okay, so let's see, what's the first step? Well, we've got the URL, so let's fire up our command prompt and go to our project directory. So that's, for me, this is where I go. And I'm going to do git init, and it's going to initialize the GitHub repository or the local repository. And then I'm going to do git add dot, and that's going to add all of the files that we have in this directory into, sort of prime them to be uploaded and pushed, if you will, up to GitHub. Now, you can create something called a git ignore, and I'm not going to go over that right now, but it's pretty easy to do. There's a git ignore plugin in PyCharm which will auto-generate one for you, or you can manually create one if you don't want like the PyCharm specific like hidden files to get pushed up. And also, once we do this, it's going to commit all of our files publicly available on GitHub, which means if you have any passwords typed in any of your documents, people will be able to see them. So when we follow these instructions to get our existing project onto GitHub, there is a warning that says do not publish passwords, API keys, all the stuff that we're about to do. So if you are doing this as a test, no big deal. So mine, I'm not worried about it. I'm going to push all that up. I'm not really worried about excluding anything because it's just for demonstration, and I'll have removed that from GitHub before you see this video. So I'm not worried about anybody finding it, but if you're doing something that is going to actually go in production, go through the remove sensitive data link, read through this, understand it, and get your passwords and your keys and tokens out of your files. Do not load your password files up to GitHub ever. Okay? Now that we got that out of the way, let's assume that you've done that, okay? And we're going to add everything, and then we're going to go to git commit with a message first commit, and that lines everything up to be pushed. Then we're going to do git remote add origin, and this is where we paste the URL in, and this tells when we push. This tells Git when we push our files where to send them to. Okay, so that assigns that GitHub remote repository to be the place where we ship all our files to. And then we can verify that with git remote verify /v, and there you go. So everything looks pretty good there. So we're going to go ahead and do git push origin master, and everything should be uploaded to GitHub now. And we'll refresh. There we go. So everything's here, including my keys.py, which has passwords in it again. So be wary of doing it. If you're not sure what you're doing, you might accidentally post some information you don't want to GitHub. So last warning on that. Okay, what next? Well, we need to get our static files prepared to be deployed by Heroku. And Heroku makes it very clear that they do not like to serve up static files. They want you to put them somewhere on some kind of storage like Amazon S3 or something and serve your files from there. But you can, if you use this module called white noise, you can install that through pip into your Python install and add this to your server configuration and add this to your settings.py, and it will actually package and upload and serve your files directly from Heroku. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. So we're going to fire up the command prompt here, and we're going to go to our virtual environment. Remember, we're not installing anything, any Python modules without logging into our virtual environment because we need them to be collected in one central space. So for me, if you recall, I created a directory called environments and I created one called weather, and this is where all of our stuff is, and there's a scripts folder and I can activate that. So now we're operating within the confines of our virtual environment. So if I install white noise here, it will not install white noise to my primary location on just my root Python directory, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and do pip install white noise. Okay, I've actually already done that. You will see a completion script. And there's one more thing that we have to install, which is not inherently clear through the tutorial, but if you try to do it without it, it'll blow up and you'll see the error message. We have to install something called Gunicorn, which is the web server that's going to handle everything for us. And we're going to go ahead and do that now. So that's pip install Gunicorn or Gunicorn or whatever you want to call it. Okay, no surprise there, I already have that installed too. Okay, so you should now have both of those installed into your virtual environment. That is a requirement, okay? Now, we need to tell Heroku, when it deploys our Python application, our Django app, what modules it needs to install to support all the functions that we're doing. And that means everything that we've installed through pip needs to go into a text file that Heroku will scan as it's installing your server, as it's setting up your server, and it'll install those for you. It'll execute pip install whatever for every single thing that you have. This is another reason why we use a virtual environment, because if we weren't using a virtual environment and we got the requirements.txt file, which we're about to do, it would pull all of the modules that we used for our main Python install, which might include like NumPy, SciPy, pandas, all kinds of stuff that's like not relevant to our web app, and Heroku would install all this stuff that you don't need, and that's just not a good thing to do. So the way you do that is you type in pip freeze requirements.txt, and there it is. That's our requirement file. So what I'm going to do is just fire up Explorer, go to that location, and that's environments, weather. Oh, it's under scripts. Whoops, there we go. Okay, so as you see, it's just got the packages that we've used in our virtual environment loaded. Not everything that I use on a day-to-day basis with my main Python install. So that's a good thing. So we're going to cut this out, go to our project folder, and paste it in. Okay, so this will be fed to Heroku when we spin up the instance to host our website. Also, Heroku defaults to Python 2.7. If you just launch your app, it's going to run Python 2.7, and some things are going to break. Okay, so you can Google that. You can say, let's see, Python versions, Heroku, maybe 3.5, something like that. And it says specifying your Python runtime. And it says here that it defaults to 2.7, but you can run 3.5. you have to create a runtime.txt file and paste this line in here. So let's do that. So we're going to go back to the command prompt. It's in our project root folder, and we're going to do notepad runtime.txt, and yes, we want to create that file. We paste that line in and save it, and there we go. So now we have runtime that specifies this. This file will be read when it's deploying your application, and it will install Python 3.5 instead of 2.7, which is super clutch because that's what we're practicing in here. One last thing, also it says in these are all just from the documentation. So if you have no idea where I'm getting all this stuff from, it's basically just you Google Django apps, Heroku, and static files, Heroku, and you'll get directed to these. It says that, okay, so we've done the requirements, we've specified the Python version, we have to create what's called a proc file, and we have to paste in this line of text right here, this code. So let's go back into the same place where we created the runtime and requirements. We're going to go in and do a notepad proc file, capital P. Yes, we'll create that. Paste this in, save it. Now, you'll notice that Notepad creates a .txt on the end of our proc file, and you don't want that. It says just to name it proc file. So let's just rename that procfile.txt to procfile. And there you go. So we've met that requirement. We're not going to build it locally. I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so that takes care of most of the requirements for Heroku to know what to build into your application. Now we need to pop over to our Django settings and start modifying the heck out of it, okay? It's configured for localhost right now, and we need to fix that. So let's go to the settings.py, and first of all, let's change our allowed host. Yours might be empty, might just look like that. We're going to allow Heroku to connect to our app. So we're going to specify the Heroku URL. But actually, before we do that, let's go in and spin up the instance for Heroku. So first thing you'll need to do, actually, to do that is I'm just going to do Google the sample exercise that they have for Heroku, and if you get started, it points you to the Heroku toolbelt, which will give you a command line interface for Heroku. So go ahead and click on that and install it. I've already done it, so I'm not going to do that again. But it allows you to summon Heroku commands through the command prompt. Okay, so I'm going to close out of that one. And what we need to do is we need to log in and create the Heroku app that we're going to be using. So let's do Heroku login. Okay, so this is how we know that the toolbelt's working. I'm going to put in my Heroku credentials that I created when I got my Heroku account. And then I'm going to do Heroku create, and I'm going to name the app that will spawn here. So I have one called Fishometer that I worked on before, and I'm going to do get a creative name here, because if it's already taken, it won't let you use it. So I'm just going to try something like Uber weather app, something long. Okay, so it just created this website for us, and if we go to the Heroku dashboard and refresh, you can see that it's spinning that up for us right now, so that's good. And then I also need to, what else do I need to do? That should be good for right now. So let's actually check. Okay, so if I do git remote verify, I see that Heroku is added as well. So this will be pushed to both places at the same time, which is pretty cool. So, all right, now that that's done, what else do we have to do? Okay. All right, yeah, the reason we did that was because we needed to figure out what the name of our app was first and make sure it's not taken before we can add it to our allowed host. So this site here, uberweatherapp.heroku.com, is what's going to be polling our Django app. So we're going to be putting that in here. .herokuapp.com. Yep, okay, cool. So that's good. We've done that. And we need to go down to the bottom to our static files. So this stuff isn't really relevant anymore because this was what we had set up previously to serve up our templates and our images to our local Django server. But we're going to be changing that. So what we're going to do is go in and paste in, let's see, we're going to go in and we're going to paste in this. Okay, so this line here, white noise, Django, blah, 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 that comes from the Django static assets right here. So it says to add that to your settings. And we also need to point it to here. And let's see, oh, I'm missing, I think, no, I'm not. Let's see. Why does that look that way? I'm missing one here. There we go. Okay, so this tells it where our static files are and where to serve them, and this is the storage that we're going to be using to serve them up. So this base directory just points to here. Okay, so our static is under our base directory. Sometimes you'll see this say project directory, and project directory can be defined as this. And what that is if you have it under station, like so if you have it under your actual project and you have static files here, you'd be serving them out of the project root, but we're not. We're serving them out of the base directory here. So, and this also needs to have, the reason it's red is we need to have it like that. There you go, as a string. So that is in, so that should help us serve up our files. So that's good. And then we need to go to WSGI and we need to add white noise there. So that's going to be from white noise.django import Django white noise. And then we need to make sure this line is in here. Okay, set default, blah, blah, blah. And then we have our standard. So we need to add one more application. Django white noise applications. Oh, application. There we go. Okay. Whew. Okay, so we got that in. That's good. And let's see what happens. Maybe that's enough. I don't know. So we're going to go in and we're going to do git add dot git commit added proc file, changed, what else did we change? We changed the static. Okay, and then we're going to do git push Heroku master. And keep our fingers crossed. So this, you'll see, is going to deploy everything to Heroku, hopefully. So it's detected that it's Python. Okay, so it caught the thing where we told it to do Python 3.5.1. So it read our version file that we created. It's reading our requirements. It's installing everything that we've told it to. So that looks pretty good. What it's doing right now is it's actually installing everything that you need to run, and then it's collecting your static files and putting them in a place where it can serve them up. So that's where you see collect static right now. So it's snatched up 56 files and copied them to a place where it can be served. And then it's declaring that it's a web app, that's going to use GUnicorn to host it. It's compressing everything into a zip file to be served out of. And it should actually also be doing make migrations and migrate to push the information over the models that we created into the database. Now, one thing to note is when you deploy a Django app to Heroku, it creates a Postgres database for you automatically. And we can see that if we go in here into Uber Weather App, and under resources, we see the Postgres database automatically generated, which is really cool. So let's go into that database and click on that one, the Uber Weather App database. And we're going to get all of our connection settings, which might take a few seconds. It's still spinning everything up. Okay, so remember how we had everything under settings and our database settings pointed to our local host? Well, this is where we're going to go in and copy and paste all of this information over. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So copy the host, paste that into host, copy the database name, paste that in here, move the username over, get our password, and port is 5432. I don't think you even need that, but we can add that in. And so that should fix that. And then it also, if you remember, our worker file also has settings as well. So we need to do the same thing here. So the host, the password, the user, and the database name. Okay, so let's see what happens here. We're going to go back and do git add dot git commit message updated database settings git push Heroku master. And this deployment will be a little bit faster because it caches everything that's already installed and it won't reinstall everything for us. So it's just applying the things that have changed. So it's pretty quick. See, it checks requirements, it checks collect static, it knows that nothing's changed, so it kind of just bumps past that and just goes right to uploading the files that have changed. So all right. Okay, so it says it's deployed. So at this point, we can try to launch the site. It may not be working yet. We can do Heroku open, and okay, so it's giving us an application error. That's not surprising. We can go into Heroku logs and see what blew up. Okay, let's see. All right, we got exception. Oh, I copied when I copied this over. where was it? I know what I did. I copied it. I copied some command here that I did it wrong. So let's go back to, I think it's settings or WSGI, and let's see, weather app. Where did that come from? Hold on, let's check the logs here. No module named getting started. I must have messed that up somewhere. I don't think. Oh, there it is. Okay. So in our proc file, I copied and pasted the line over, and that is what screwed us up here. So let's go and change that to the name of our application. So you have to read what you're doing when you're copying from the documents over. It uses the getting started, which is like the little helper app. They help you build it first. So that will screw you up pretty bad. So let's try this again. Git add, git commit, and that's going to be, we'll say, updated proc file, git push Heroku master. Try that again. I knew it was hiding somewhere. So the logs are going to be very helpful. So if you're having trouble with your site not loading, just type Heroku logs and find the exception and Google that, and typically someone will help you figure out what the heck you did wrong. And even though you follow this tutorial, anything could go wrong, so expect to have to do some bug squashing during this particular phase, because a lot is changing and it's easy to miss something. So, all right. Let's try it again. Okay, great. So at this point, it's blown up because it's saying that it can't read the observation from, so this is a database problem, okay? So it's saying that it's tried to read from the database and it couldn't read from the database. So that could mean either our database is blank, or more than likely it did not successfully migrate over. So what we can do to verify is go into pgadmin, and we can actually connect to the remote database. So this is really cool. So I'm going to right click on servers. Oh, maybe not. I'm going to file, add server. There we go. And I'm going to go and call this Heroku weather app. And I will get our database connection settings again. And let's see, host, database, we don't need that. We need username. And actually, yeah, we do need database name. It's going to be here. And that should, oh, the password. Okay, so there it is. We can double click on the server, and there are quite a few databases in here. These are everybody's database, but we can't connect to everybody else's database. We'll only be able to connect to ours because it's the only one we're authorized to see. And that database name is DCJH, if you see here. So we're going to go down to there, and it'll be the only one without an X on it, by the way. There it is. Schemas, public, tables. Okay, so Django did not migrate our settings over. And if you recall, when we built our models, it didn't push this into our database and construct our columns in our Postgres database. Generally, it does. Heroku is supposed to make migrations, and it usually does, but for whatever reason, it seemed to not work. So it's good to know that you can do Heroku run Python manage.py, make migrations, and do it on your own. So you can run pretty much any Python command you want just by putting Heroku run, and it'll execute. All right, so no changes detected. It must have run the make migrations, but didn't actually do the migration. So let's try that. Heroku run manage.py, migrate. Fingers crossed here. Oh. Python manage.py migrate. There we go. What we're hoping to see is a bunch of stuff added here. Ah, okay, there we go. So now, if we refresh this, okay, that looks good. So we have our station reading, which is what we really needed. And it's got all our columns in there. So let's give it a shot. Let's go to our worker here and run our worker. And, oh, okay, success. So it says it was able to push some data into the database. So let's go here and refresh this. Ah, there you go. Okay, so that's pretty much it. But there's some other things that we can do. So now that we have this thing up live, we need to turn off debugging mode. Because if you remember, when it exploded a few minutes ago, it spit out all kinds of information about our configuration and everything, and you don't want it to generate that the debugging log for the general public, because they will see all kinds of information that they're not supposed to see. So when you go into your settings and you go up here to debug, it says do not leave this turned on during production. And that's really, really good idea, because people can run something that breaks and they can see everything that your app is doing, and that's not good. So we'll make that false, and we'll do git commit, and we'll do, whoa. Oh, that was not what we're supposed to do, not git commit. I wonder it blew up. Git add, there we go, git commit debug false, git push Heroku master, and that way nothing will change visually for us, but it'll keep people from getting the debug log when something blows up, which is pretty important. So while that goes, we talked about earlier separating your worker app from your Django application, because it would reduce loading time in the web page, and it would allow you to schedule the worker app to run at a specific interval, and it would run constantly in the background and update your database over and over again. Well, there are a lot of ways to do that. There are some scheduling databases that you can use, and some other interfaces that are kind of complicated, and I'm not going to get into those. But if you start looking at scheduling workers with Heroku, there's a ton of walkthroughs on using certain database technologies to sort of queue up workers that get pulled out and executed. But fortunately for us, there's one that's like actually pretty easy to do, and it's called Heroku Scheduler. And so where is that at here? It's under resources somewhere. There you go, find more add-ons. And we want one called Heroku Scheduler. Can I search this? Yeah. Okay, so Heroku Scheduler, and I'm going to hit install. And I'm going to install it to Weather App. And we'll just do the free plan, and it's going to provision that. We can go into Scheduler. This is like as simple as it gets. All you do is type in a command to execute, and it will do it for you. And we can change it down to once every 10 minutes. So once daily, once hourly, once every 10 minutes. If you need it to execute on a different time schedule other than these three choices, you have to find a more complicated solution. Maybe there's another add-on that does it. I don't know. This one just works for me. So every 10 minutes, we're going to do Python worker.py, and let's see. We'll see if this works. So right now, the last time it was updated was almost 1 p.m. today, and that's when I ran the worker app. That was about 5 minutes ago. This is Pacific time. So this is the last time when we manually ran it from here. So let's see if it updates on its own once we deploy this here. Where is it? There it is. So save. And so it's 12:45. Refresh. Oh, what happened? No idea. Something blew up. Let's see. That was weird. When we turn debugging off, our site melted. Not really sure why that happened, but it did. So let's try to turn that back. It's almost as if I did something else here. Let's see. That looks good. Let's let this deploy. We were so close. So close. Yeah, okay. So I'll have to check on that and see what causes that, because I have the host allowed here, and that shouldn't cause a problem. Let me check something here. Let's see. All right. Maybe I need the full path. Let's try that, because that's seemed to be why it's getting rejected. I don't know. Let's check that. We'll add the actual full URL there to our allowed host and turn that back to false. Updated hosts. And let's see what happened here. This says the scheduler is set to run in a minute, so we should be able to refresh our page and see that bump up to like 12:54 Pacific. Almost there. All right. Hopefully it doesn't blow up. Nope, sure did. Okay. So I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. I don't know why that's happening, but I will figure it out and I will let you know. So we will go back. Push that one more time and we'll see if the scheduler worked, and then I'll pause the video, figure out why it's blowing up, and we'll come back and we'll check it out, see what we had to do to fix that. Actually, you know what, I could check the logs. That would probably be a smart idea. Maybe we could just figure it out a little bit faster. I don't know. All right, launching, refresh, and with any luck, we'll be good to go. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so it updated. Everything looks good. So I'll check on the debug and see what's going on. I'll come right back and we'll wrap this up. All right, figured it out. Took a few seconds, but when we are loading our static files into the template, we need to change this from static files to just static. Okay, that way it can serve up from the static folder that's being served out. So static files will work locally, but not when it's hosted on Heroku. So that's it. So now the debug is set to false, so everything's locked up, and this appears to be working fine. Its last collection was at 105. Probably can refresh this another minute and see that it's updated. Yep, there you go. So the worker app's running fine. Our app is deployed. Everything looks great. And that's it. So kind of a lot of steps, but not all that bad once you've done it once or twice. Hope you enjoyed this video series and hope you learned a lot. So if you have any questions, leave a comment. If you like this, please subscribe, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks.